Thanks for clicking. This is Buddy Chronicle. So, a man spends nearly 4 decades building a life with someone, only to discover he never really knew her at all. But that's not where this story ends. Stay to the end, and let's get into it. The coffee maker was beeping. That's what I remember most clearly. Not her words. Not the way she couldn't meet my eyes. Just that persistent beeping from the kitchen, the machine announcing that the pot was ready, like it was any other Tuesday morning. I need you to go stay with Kevin for a few days, Harold, just until the weekend. My wife, of 38 years, stood in our living room in Westerville, Ohio, a suburb just north of Columbus, where we'd raised our kids, buried our parents, and grown old together. She was 62 years old, and I had never seen her look so pale. Stay with Kevin? Our son lives 45 minutes away. Why would I drive to Dublin when my own bed is right upstairs? Please. Her voice cracked on the word. I just need some time alone. To think. Think about what? Margaret, we've been married almost 4 decades. If something's wrong, you tell me. We work it out together. That's what we do. She finally looked at me then, and what I saw in her eyes made my stomach drop. Fear. Not the nervous kind you get before a doctor's appointment. Real fear, the kind that lives in your bones. Harold, I'm asking you. Please. Just a few days. I should have refused. Should have planted myself in that living room and demanded answers. I was 64 years old, retired from 31 years as a manufacturing supervisor at the Worthington Industries plant. I wasn't a man who ran from problems. I faced them head on, fixed them, moved forward, but there was something in her voice that morning. Something that made me reach for my keys instead of my questions. Fine, I'll go. But when I come back, we're talking about whatever this is. She nodded, still not looking at me. I packed a bag, kissed her on the forehead out of habit, and drove to my son's house wondering if my marriage was falling apart at the age when most couples are planning their grandchildren's college funds. The call came at 11:23 that night. I was in Kevin's guest room, lying awake in the darkness, running through every conversation Margaret and I had in the past month, looking for clues I might have missed. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Frank DeLuca, our next-door neighbor of 22 years, Harold. Frank's voice was shaking so badly I almost didn't recognize it. You need to come home right now. There's an ambulance at your house. Police, too. A lot of them. My blood turned to ice. Margaret? Is Margaret okay? I don't know, buddy. I can't see much from here, but there's yellow tape going up. Harold, I don't know what's happening, but you need to get here. I was dressed and in my truck within 2 minutes. My son tried to follow me, but I told him to stay with his wife and kids. Whatever was waiting for me, I needed to face it alone first. The drive from Dublin to Westerville usually takes 40 minutes. I made it in 25, running every yellow light, pushing my old F-150 harder than I had in years. My hands were shaking on the wheel. 38 years. We had 38 years of marriage, 2 kids, 4 grandchildren. Whatever was happening at my house, whatever Margaret had been hiding, we would get through it. We always did. What I saw when I turned onto our street stopped my heart. 4 police cruisers. An ambulance with its back doors open. A white van marked crime scene unit. And wrapped around my front porch, bright yellow tape that seemed to glow under the streetlights. I slammed the truck into park and ran toward my house. An officer intercepted me before I reached the tape. Sir, I need you to stop right there. This is my house. Where's my wife? What happened to Margaret? Sir, are you the homeowner? Yes, Harold Brennan. I live here. That's my wife in there. Let me through. The officer's expression shifted. Something guarded moved behind his eyes. Mr. Brennan, I need you to come with me. There are detectives who need to speak with you. Not until someone tells me what happened to my wife. A woman's voice came from behind me. Calm, measured, practiced. Mr. Brennan, I'm Detective Carla Vasquez. Your wife is alive. She's being treated by paramedics right now. The relief hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled. Alive. She was alive. But if she was alive, why the crime scene tape? Why the army of police? What happened? I demanded. Why is there crime scene tape on my house? Detective Vasquez studied my face for a long moment. Mr. Brennan, when was the last time you were inside your residence? This morning. Around 9. My wife asked me to leave for a few days, said she needed space. She asked you to leave your own home, and you agreed? We've been having some problems lately. I thought she just needed time to think. The detective nodded slowly, her face unreadable. Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you own any firearms? The question hit me like a physical blow. I own a hunting rifle. It's in my gun, safe in the basement. Why are you asking me about guns? She didn't answer, just gestured toward an unmarked sedan. Please come with me, Mr. Brennan. There's something you need to know. Let me tell you about the life I thought I had. My name is Harold Brennan. I grew up in Lancaster, Ohio, son of a factory worker and a school secretary. I married Margaret Sullivan in 1986, 2 years after we met at a church picnic. She was a nurse at Riverside Methodist Hospital, kind and steady and everything I thought I wanted in a wife. We had 2 children. Kevin came along in 1988, followed by our daughter Christine in 1991. We bought the house in Westerville when Kevin was 3 years old. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a backyard where I built a treehouse and installed a swing set and hosted countless birthday parties over the years. I worked my way up from the production floor to floor supervisor to shift manager at Worthington. Margaret worked at the hospital until she retired 3 years ago. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. $216,000 in savings, the house paid off, pensions from both our jobs. The kind of financial security that lets you sleep at night. For 38 years, I thought I knew this woman. Thought I understood her moods, her fears, her dreams, her secrets. I didn't know anything. The first sign of trouble came about 2 years ago, just after Margaret retired. She became different, restless in a way I'd never seen. She started volunteering more, taking classes at the community center, spending time with friends I'd never met. I thought it was just the adjustment to retirement, the need to fill the hours that work used to occupy. Then the secret started. Hushed phone calls that ended when I walked into the room. New clothes that seemed too fancy for grocery shopping and book club. A password on her phone when there had never been one before. I asked her about it once. Just asked if everything was okay. She looked at me like I'd accused her of murder. Of course everything's okay. Why wouldn't it be? I dropped it. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself that after nearly 4 decades, I knew my wife, and she wasn't the type to lie. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about everything. Detective Vasquez took me to the Westerville police station. Not under arrest, she assured me. Just for questioning. I sat in an interview room for 3 hours answering questions about my marriage, my whereabouts, my hunting rifle. Yes, I was at my son's house all evening. Yes, my daughter-in-law could confirm. Yes, I'd left voluntarily when Margaret asked. No, I didn't know why she wanted me gone. Finally, Vasquez came back with a folder. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to show you some photographs. I need you to tell me if you recognize anything. The first photo was my living room. But wrong. The coffee table overturned. Lamp shattered against the wall. Dark stains on the carpet that I knew, with terrible certainty, were blood. Oh my God. Second photo. My kitchen. Broken dishes on the floor. A knife block knocked over. More blood, splattered across the cabinets. What happened in my house? Third photo. A man. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive-looking suit. Lying on my living room floor with a dark hole in his chest and empty eyes staring at nothing. Do you recognize this man, Mr. Brennan? I stared at the photo. Studied the face. I had never seen him before in my life. No. I have no idea who that is. His name is Victor Ashworth, 61 years old. Retired investment banker from Upper Arlington. Very wealthy, very prominent. I don't know him. I've never heard that name. Detective Vasquez leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, Victor Ashworth was found shot to death in your living room approximately 4 hours ago. shot with a .38 caliber revolver, which we recovered at the scene. Your wife was found at the house with defensive injuries. She's claiming self-defense. She says Mr. Ashworth attacked her. My mind couldn't process what she was saying. A dead man in my house. A gun. Self-defense. Why was this man in my house? Why would he attack Margaret? The detective's expression softened slightly. It was almost pity. Mr. Brennan, your wife has admitted to having a relationship with Mr. Ashworth for the past 19 months. She says she tried to end it tonight. She says when she told him it was over, he became violent. 19 months. The words hung in the air like poison. My wife of 38 years had been having an affair. For 19 months. While I went to work, paid the bills, played with our grandchildren, slept beside her every night. For 19 months, she had been lying to me. I want a lawyer, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Far away. Hollow. Of course. And I want to see my wife. That's not possible right now, Mr. Brennan. She's being processed. Processed? Like she was a piece of paperwork? Like she wasn't the woman I'd loved for almost 4 decades. I was cleared as a suspect within 48 hours. Security cameras at my son's house showed me arriving at 3 in the afternoon and not leaving until Frank's call. The timeline made it impossible for me to have been the shooter. But being cleared didn't mean being free. Kevin drove me back to our house 2 days later. The crime scene tape was gone, but I could still see where it had been. Yellow residue on the porch posts. A reminder of what had happened inside. I couldn't go in. Stood on my own front lawn like a stranger, staring at the door. Dad. Kevin's voice was gentle. We don't have to do this today. I need to see it. No, you don't. Come back to our place. Christine's flying in tomorrow. We'll figure this out together. I shook my head. 38 years, Kevin. I lived in this house for over 30 years. I need to see what happened in there. We went in together. The blood had been cleaned up. Someone from a specialty service, Kevin told me, but you could still see where it had been. Slight discoloration on the carpet. A patch on the kitchen floor that was cleaner than everything around it. I stood in my living room where a man had died and tried to understand how I had missed everything. The affair. 19 months. Victor Ashworth, retired investment banker, worth something like $14 million according to the news reports. He'd met Margaret at a volunteer luncheon she attended shortly after retiring. One thing led to another. One thing led to another. That's how everyone described it. Like it was inevitable. Like it wasn't 1,000 individual choices to betray me. Ashworth was married too. Had been for 33 years. His wife was devastated, the papers said. Blindsided, like me. 2 marriages destroyed because our spouses decided the lives they'd built weren't enough. Margaret was arraigned on second-degree murder charges but pleaded not guilty by reason of self-defense. Her story went like this. She had tried to end the affair. Ashworth became enraged. He'd brought a gun with him, threatened to kill her if she left him. In the struggle, she got the weapon away from him. When he came at her again, she fired. The prosecution told a different story. Margaret had lured Ashworth to the house, knowing I would be gone. She had obtained a revolver 3 weeks earlier, purchased at a gun show with cash. When Ashworth arrived, expecting a romantic evening, she shot him in cold blood. The struggle scene was staged. The defensive wounds were self-inflicted. I attended every day of the trial. My children begged me not to. Kevin thought it would be too painful. Christine thought I was punishing myself. Maybe they were both right. But I had to know. Had to hear every detail, every piece of evidence, every argument. I had spent 38 years not knowing my wife. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life not knowing what really happened in my house. The evidence was complicated. The gun was registered to Ashworth. That supported Margaret's story that he'd brought it. But gunshot residue patterns suggested the shooter had been standing over the victim, not struggling with him at close range. There were signs of a struggle in the living room. Overturned furniture, broken items, but investigators couldn't determine if the struggle happened before or after the shooting. Margaret's defensive wounds were real, bruises on her arms, scratches on her face. but a medical expert for the prosecution testified they could have been self-inflicted. The jury deliberated for 5 days. When they came back, the verdict was voluntary manslaughter. Not murder, but not self-defense either. Something in between. The judge sentenced Margaret to 10 years in prison. She would be eligible for parole in 7. She looked at me once during the sentencing. Just once. Her eyes were red from crying, and in them I saw something I hadn't expected. Relief. Like she'd been carrying a weight for years. And now, even in chains, she was finally free of it. I filed for divorce 1 month after the sentencing. Uncontested, Margaret signed everything from prison. The house sold quickly, despite its history. Some people are morbid like that. I moved into a small apartment in Gahanna, near enough to Kevin and Christine that I could see my grandchildren, but far enough that I didn't have to explain myself to neighbors who knew our story. The first year was the hardest, learning to live alone after 38 years of partnership, cooking meals for one, sleeping in a bed that felt too big even though it was half the size of our old king. My children dealt with it in different ways. Kevin became protective, called me every day, invited me to dinner 3 times a week. Never let me turn down an invitation. He was angry at his mother, refused to visit her in prison, told me he'd never forgive her. Christine was quieter. She visited Margaret once, came back, and didn't speak for 2 days. When she finally talked to me about it, she said, "Mom's not the same person. I don't know who she is anymore." Neither did I. My grandchildren were too young to understand the details. Kevin's kids were 7 and 5. Christine's daughter was 3. They knew Grandma was gone but didn't know why. Eventually they would. Eventually, we would have to explain that the woman who baked them cookies and read them stories had killed a man in her living room. That conversation terrified me more than anything. 3 years passed. I turned 67. Retired fully this time. From everything. Stopped consulting at the plant. Stopped pretending I had anywhere to be. I spent my days gardening in my small apartment's community plot, reading history books, watching my grandchildren grow. Kevin finally started talking to his mother again. Brief phone calls at first, then a visit. He came to my apartment afterward, sat at my kitchen table, and stared at his hands. "She's not making excuses anymore," he said. "She says she made choices and she has to live with them. She didn't ask me to forgive her." "What did you say?" I said I didn't know if I could, but I'm her son. I can't just pretend she doesn't exist. I understood that. The terrible middle ground between love and betrayal. You don't stop caring about someone just because they destroyed your life. I received a letter from Margaret 2 years into her sentence. I almost threw it away unopened. But something made me sit down at my kitchen table and read it. "Harold, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you burned it. But I need to say things, even if you never see them. I'm sorry. Those words are meaningless now, I know. But I need to say them anyway. I didn't plan for any of this to happen." That sounds like an excuse, and maybe it is. But when I retired, I felt like I disappeared. Like 35 years of nursing had been my entire identity, and without it, I was nobody. Victor made me feel seen, special, wanted. I know that's pathetic. I know I should have talked to you about feeling lost instead of looking for validation from someone else. The affair was wrong. The lies were wrong. What happened that night was wrong. I want you to know the truth about that night, not the trial version, just the truth. Victor did bring the gun. He'd been threatening me for weeks, saying if I tried to leave him, he'd tell you everything. Ruin my life, hurt the people I loved. I asked you to leave because I was afraid of what might happen. Not to protect you from inconvenience, but because I genuinely feared for your safety. When I told him it was over, he hit me, knocked me down. Then, he pulled the gun. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gotten it away from him. Maybe he would have just scared me and left. Maybe he would have killed me. I'll never know. In that moment, I made a choice, and now I live with it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I lost the right to ask you for anything when I betrayed our marriage. But please tell Kevin and Christine that I love them. Tell my grandchildren that their grandmother thinks about them every day. And Harold, please know that the good years were real. I did love you. I still do. I just lost myself somewhere along the way. Margaret, I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't look at it again for months. The parole hearing came last month. 7 years served of a 10-year sentence. Model prisoner. Participated in counseling. Expressed genuine remorse. The board notified me as the victim's family. Asked if I wanted to submit a statement. I thought about it for weeks. Kevin said I should oppose parole. Christine said it was my decision. My grandchildren, now 14, 12, and 10, knew enough to have opinions. Kevin's oldest said she didn't want to see Grandma ever again. His youngest said she missed her. In the end, I wrote something. My name is Harold Brennan. I was married to Margaret Brennan for 38 years. We raised 2 children together. We have 5 grandchildren between us. On the night my wife asked me to leave our home, I didn't know why. I didn't know about Victor Ashworth or the affair or any of what would happen. I only knew that the woman I'd loved for almost 4 decades was asking for space, and I gave it to her. What happened that night destroyed our family. Not just the marriage, but the sense of trust that holds a family together. My children lost their mother. My grandchildren lost their grandmother. And I lost the life I thought I was living. I'm not here to argue for or against Margaret's release. That's your decision. I'm here to say that whatever you decide, I hope it leads somewhere like peace. For Margaret, who has to live with what she did. For our children and grandchildren, who are still learning how to love someone they can't fully trust. And for me, who spent 38 years married to someone I never really knew. None of us chose this outcome. But all of us have to live with it. Harold Brennan. The board granted parole. Margaret will be released next month. Kevin called me when we found out. His voice was tight with anger. You could have stopped this, Dad. You could have told them to keep her locked up. I could have, I agreed. But what would that change? It would mean justice. Would it? She served 7 years, Kevin. She's 70 years old. Her health isn't good. Keeping her in there another 3 years wouldn't undo what happened. It would just be revenge. He was quiet for a long time. Maybe I want revenge. I understood that. When you get to be my age, I told him, you realize revenge doesn't fill the hole. It just digs it deeper. Your mother did a terrible thing. Several terrible things. But she's still your mother. She's still the woman who sat up with you when you had croup as a baby, who taught you to drive, who cried at your wedding. That person still exists, even if she's buried under everything else. I don't know how to forgive her. Neither do I. But I'm trying. Not for her. For me. Because carrying this anger is exhausting, and I'm too old to keep lifting it. My granddaughter, Kevin's oldest, asked to talk to me last week. She's 14 now, old enough to understand most of what happened. We sat on my small patio, watching the sun set over the apartment complex's parking lot. Not exactly the view from our old house in Westerville, but it was mine. Grandpa, she said, do you still love Grandma? I thought about that question for a long time. I love who she was, I finally said. Or who I thought she was. I don't know if those are the same thing anymore. But you're not angry? I was. For a long time. Sometimes I still am. But anger takes a lot of energy, sweetheart. And at my age, I'd rather spend that energy on you and your brother and sister and your cousins. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think she's a bad person? I think she's a person who did bad things. There's a difference, maybe. Or maybe there isn't. I've been trying to figure that out for 7 years. Will you see her? When she gets out? That question kept me up that night. I drove by our old house last weekend. Don't know why. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Or some need to see if the past still existed. The new owners have repainted it. Green instead of the white, I remember. New landscaping. A basketball hoop in the driveway that wasn't there in our time. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, watching. A woman came out to get the mail. Young, maybe 35. She smiled at me, probably wondering why an old man was parked in front of her house. I drove away. The past is another country. You can visit, but you can't live there. All you can do is keep moving forward. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates, here's what I want you to tell you. Pay attention to your spouse, to your marriage, to the small signs that something is wrong. I didn't pay attention. When Margaret became distant after retirement, I told myself it was normal. When she started keeping secrets, I told myself I was being paranoid. When she asked me to leave that night, I went without fighting. Maybe if I had pushed harder, asked more questions, demanded more honesty, things would have been different. Maybe not. Maybe Margaret was always going to make the choices she made, regardless of what I did. But at least I would have known. At least I wouldn't have been blindsided by crime scene tape on my own front door. Don't let your marriage dissolve into silence. Don't accept distance as normal. Don't ignore your gut when it tells you something is wrong. Fight for your relationship or end it honestly. You deserve better than deception. We all do. Kevin brought his family over for dinner last Sunday. Christine flew in from Denver with her daughter. My small apartment was crowded with people I loved, noisy with children's laughter and adult conversation and the chaos of a family gathering. My granddaughter helped me in the kitchen. We made pot roast, Margaret's old recipe. I hadn't cooked it in years, but it felt right somehow. Honoring the good parts of the past while building something new. "This is nice, Grandpa," my granddaughter said, setting the table. "Having everyone together, it is." We sat down to eat. My son said grace, my grandchildren complained about vegetables. My daughter talked about her work. Normal family dinner. 7 years ago, I didn't think we would ever have one again. But here we are, broken and rebuilt. Scarred, but surviving. A family that looks different than it used to, but is still, somehow, a family. It's not what I planned, but it's real. And after everything we've been through, real is everything. Thanks for listening. I don't know if my story helps anyone. It's not a story with clear heroes or villains, just people making choices and living with the consequences. But maybe that's the point. Life isn't a movie. There aren't always clear answers or satisfying resolutions. Sometimes you just survive and call that a victory. If you're going through something hard right now, a betrayal, a crisis, a moment where everything falls apart, know that survival is possible. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but you'll get through it, one day at a time. One choice at a time. And that's enough.